Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm doing a review for the MSI Optix AG321CQR 32-inch monitor. So the draw for me in reviewing this is I actually did the 34-inch ultra-wide monitor in this lineup. It was the 100 hertz one, and I really loved the aesthetics of the mold itself, the colors, and it had minimal ghosting with it. It was just a really good product. They ended up coming out with a 144 hertz version of that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on one. I was trying to do the review, I ordered it, and then they canceled the order. I guess they just couldn't get them in stock. So dropped that, moved on to other things, and then I saw this pop up, which had me excited because 32 inch is typically what I play on outside of this big 43-inch monitor right here. It's really the size that I prefer and I really like. And so this is going to put it price-wise, it's $350, in that range that we see with a lot of other good, I would say budget. They're still expensive, but compared to other monitors, they're not as expensive for 32-inch VA panel monitors. With this one, I know it's going to get comparisons to the Samsung G5, and that's really what I'm curious to see, just based off my experience with that, is does this perform just as well, maybe even a little bit better in the color department is my big hope with this. So this doesn't have the 1000R curve like the Samsung G5 either, so there are going to be subtle differences, but you're going to find that a lot of things are very similar here. So we're going to get this thing unboxed here. I'm going to talk about the specs, and then I'm going to spend a couple weeks with this, and then I'm going to cover the things that I like about this monitor, the things that I don't potentially like about this monitor, and then we'll wrap everything up. So let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed and cover the specs now.
The MSI Optix AG321CQR is a 32-inch 1440p VA panel monitor with 165 Hz refresh rate, a 1 millisecond motion picture response time, and FreeSync Premium Pro. This is an LED backlit panel with 250 nits, a 3000 to 1 contrast ratio, a 100 million to 1 dynamic contrast ratio, and 1.07 billion display colors. This covers 97.59% of the DCI P3 color space and 123.26% of the SRGB color gamut. For ports, you will find just one DP 1.2 and one HDMI 2.0. There is a USB 2.0 Type B for firmware updates, which means you won't need a thumb drive to update the monitor, and there is also a headphone jack. The monitor has height adjustment from 0 to 90 millimeters, swivel from -30 degrees to 30 degrees, tilt from -5 to 20 degrees, and pivot from -5 to 5 degrees. This is VESA compatible for 75mm by 75mm. Inside the box, you will find the monitor, stand, quick start guide, warranty card, and then you will find the VESA mount screws, a DP cable, the power brick, the power cable, and then the USB Type B cable. So I've actually already recorded all of the voiceover work for this video. This is me coming back because I noticed, just kind of reviewing this video, it looks really good. The monitor looks really good in the video that I've recorded. So people are going to be like, why are you saying it doesn't look that good? This looks really great to me. My camera is making this look really good. It doesn't look as good in person. And I say this multiple times, it looks decent if you can actually get your calibration right with this. It has really vibrant colors. It's just a process to get there. So do keep that in mind. The videos that you're actually going to be seeing with me playing games and things like that, it makes this look a little bit better than it actually does in person. So now that I've covered the specs, this is usually where I showcase the panel menu settings, but I'm going to save that for a separate video as, to be honest, it's quite a bit to cover, and I've really been disappointed with it. The handful of things I do want to cover though is FreeSync is not enabled by default, so you will want to turn that on. This is also in eco mode by default, which looks really bad, so just a forewarning on that. You will want to go to your panel settings and change that and turn eco mode off. That way you can actually adjust to the different presets and you can adjust the contrast ratio and these other settings, but by default it is in eco mode and you can't adjust those until you turn that off. And HDR is enabled via Windows settings and not the in-panel settings, which this isn't VESA certified, and considering the nits, it actually means that this is just fake HDR. And last, I'll actually be showcasing a couple presets for the gaming mode here, and then also for the professional mode. So I'll actually make sure that these pop up, and then they'll be labeled at the bottom so you actually know which is which. And hopefully it gives you an idea of what this is going to look like in person. Just keep in mind that it'll actually look a little bit better when you're actually there versus just watching the video right now. It's also hard to pick up on camera, but for the gaming presets here, it's actually affecting not only the color a little bit, but really it's affecting the sharpness. So for FPS, it actually looks really grainy, and for racing, it looks really smooth. This is also with my current personal setting of 70% for brightness and contrast ratio. Now, I usually cover the good things about a monitor first before moving on to the bad, but this has too many pros and cons that come in pairs, so I'll be covering the good and bad together. The first thing I want to talk about though is the monitor doesn't look great out of the box, and the presets that I showcased aren't great either. Now, I wasn't expecting that necessarily, but I was also disappointed by how hard it has been to calibrate this monitor. With that being said though, if you can nail down the panel settings, this can look decent, and I would say it's a step above the G5 in terms of its color. It's just a bit more of a process to get it there than the G5 was. I'll be making a separate video showcasing my settings to help you with a good starting point like I did with the G5. This is to my personal preference though, so keep that in mind, and the link will be in the description and at the top corner right now. The frustrating part here though is that I think most casual gamers or people on a budget will end up getting this monitor, and I know it might be frustrating with this process for them to get it looking somewhat decent. I've used so many great monitors lately that look amazing out of the box that having this be the most difficult monitor to calibrate has been quite disappointing. The hard part here is that getting the colors to look good has made the text more blurry than it already is out of the box, so calibrating this monitor is a fine balancing act. It looks really dull to me if I keep the brightness and contrast low, but increasing this has made my text extremely blurry. So if you're somebody that does a lot of writing, I probably wouldn't get this monitor. This also suffers from an increase in reds, so I had to actually turn that down in the panel settings so everything didn't have a red hue to it. The whites here are especially bad as it can have a red or blue hue to it, and when balanced properly, the whites look dull and more of an off-white color than pure white. I think part of this is going to be because of the extremely low nits with this monitor, the 250 nits. With this, it just would have been a lot better if it was at 350 or more. I think everything else would be really, really solid with this monitor, but because those nits are so low, it is, in my opinion, one of the things that's causing a lot of these problems. And with that being said, let's move on to HDR, which in my opinion with this monitor, it's a complete waste. The panel menu will show if HDR is enabled, but you actually have to turn this on via Windows. Now, typically you're going to select that via the panel menu first and then in Windows with most monitors. And especially if it has the option for different nits. For instance, some of the Scepters I've reviewed, you can choose 600 or 1000 nits. This, it doesn't have the option there at all, and this lacks the VESA certification. So between the low nits and the fact that you're not even going to enable anything in the panel settings themselves, this to me is just basically fake HDR. I would definitely say this is up there for one of the worst HDR experiences that I've had with a monitor, which until now has been the Dark Matter ultrawide monitor from Monoprice. This definitely matches that. And to clarify that just a little bit, so if you turn this on and you get everything set up, and I'm showcasing Doom Eternal here, it's not adding anything to the game, and that's what I want with my HDR. I want that to be a better playing experience than if I have it turned off. This, if I nail it, to me, it looks exactly the same as if I just don't have HDR enabled at all. I don't see a huge increase or any benefit to actually having it enabled with this. So to me, it's a feature that's there, but again, I don't think anybody's going to use it. And if you're using it for just Windows, it's going to look really, really bad. So I don't think there are going to be too many people that are actually going to use HDR with this monitor. And if you're looking for that experience, I don't think it would be something that you would be drawn towards this monitor anyways. Usually you're going to go with something that has much higher nits than this, and then also has local dimming with it, which this doesn't have local dimming at all. It doesn't say that anywhere on the website or any listings for this monitor. It's just one of those things, you know, this doesn't have local dimming. It doesn't have the full array local dimming with this. It's not VESA certified. There's all these things that are missing with the HDR here. Moving on though, the refresh rate here is okay, and it's comparable to the G5, meaning since these are both VA panels, you will have some ghosting and black smearing, but both of these monitors are actually higher on the list for it being more noticeable. It's not as bad as the dark matter ultra wide monitor I mentioned earlier, and for casual gamers it might not be really noticeable much at all, but for enthusiast and hardcore gamers I think it will be pretty easy to see, and something that might make you really dislike this monitor. Now this does have 3 different settings for the refresh rate. You have normal, fast, and fastest. As you increase towards fastest, the thing that's happening is that you're getting a little bit better refresh rate and response time with that, but the image is becoming increasingly grainy and it doesn't look nearly as good. So there's a trade-off with that. I personally just leave it on normal. You also have the ability to enable G-Sync compatibility. I have noticed that it's maybe a little bit smoother with it enabled, but it's not by a large amount with this though. Next, the monitor aesthetics here are really good, and the height, swivel, tilt, and pan adjustments make this better than the G5 if you won't be using a monitor arm. The G5 only has tilt, which I was disappointed to see, but it isn't a concern with the MSI monitor here at all. The light on the back is a nice touch, although you won't really see it most likely, and it kind of casts a light onto your wall if your monitor is close, but the lighting can actually only be controlled with the MSI Mystic lighting software, which I personally loathe. It's created issues for my main rig with other software and even certain video games. It's been a pain just to delete, so I won't be installing it on my second rig, which is the rig that I actually used with this monitor. The aesthetics though of this mold are really clean and nice looking, and it makes a great addition to any rig that's not trying to look like a crazy gaming build. Next, the USB 2.0 Type B on the monitor initially had me quite confused, but doing a little bit more digging, it's just so you don't have to update the monitor with a thumbstick. You can simply plug this right into your PC and update it that way. With it being there though, I'm kind of bummed that they didn't just throw in a couple extra USB ports to make it an expansion and not just for updating the monitor drivers. Last, I know this will come up in the comment section, which is this going to be good for next gen console players? And because of how difficult it is to calibrate with the colors, it is a risk. If you're up for it, it could be good because it does have good vivid colors, but the peak brightness being low, the nits being low, I don't know if this is going to be the best choice for the money. You get the higher refresh rate, but because of the lower nits and then the difficulty calibrating this, it's just something that I would be worried that it's going to be such an issue for a console player. It's a headache they don't want to deal with. I personally wouldn't recommend that. I would look towards something else that has higher nits. And also, if you're wanting to do 4K gaming, this is going to upscale that. That's fine. But if you want the actual true 4K gaming, you're going to need to get a 4K monitor, and then you're going to want that HDMI 2.1 and not the 2.0 that this has. So in conclusion, this is a monitor with more downsides than upsides in my opinion, and as an overall package, I think most people are going to be disappointed by it. I call these budget monitors, and I get comments all the time saying the word budget for a $300+ monitor doesn't make sense. And my reasoning for using that word is that compared to the monitors with similar specs but better performance, it's usually hundreds of dollars more for those monitors. So by comparison, these are budget monitors, but I get that they are still expensive. For monitors, the cost is what I usually use as the guiding principle for labeling something as budget, and that's going to be a spectrum within the given space the product exists. For instance, there are budget versions of cars, but cars are expensive in general. With this monitor though, I feel like the price may be on the budget side, but so are the parts and performance, which I hate to see from MSI when their ultra-wide optics monitors are so good. This was a big letdown as I went in thinking I would get the same performance as the ultra-wides, but that just isn't the case. When compared to the G5 even though the colors here are good, I would probably actually take the G5 still over this because it's slightly easier to calibrate. Keep in mind it is still hard to calibrate for the G5, it's just not quite as hard as this has been. If you are up for a challenge though and are wanting the better colors, the stand adjustment this offers over the G5, then this would be a solid choice for you. Personally though, I would spend the extra $150 and go for a slightly smaller monitor, but with way better performance with the Scepter 27-inch C275B QWN168W. Well, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions about this monitor, let me know in the comment section. Hopefully this helps you make an informed purchasing decision when it comes to this monitor. If you like the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.